Greetings, families. Welcome back. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. We are in Burkina Faso in the courtroom, the criminal court case that is going on. This is almost like the last bit of it. Yes, the judges explained to them what they did. The money they took is not for ordinary people, it's for babies, it's for internal displaced people, it's for people who go to bed and sleep with empty stomach. They just bow down their head in shame and they were watching as he was speaking to them, telling them, look, we train people to go to the front line to fight, and that money is for their children, their families. You got no right to misuse those monies. I tell you, 15 minutes video. Please listen and I'll be back. Very, very powerful. Thank you, families.
We've never felt out of a war. As you know, there's a payoff, so we have to get organized in a hurry, since we weren't expecting this. It must have been the state of the. In an emergency, training Burkina teams and sending them to the front requires a lot of resources. And some Burkina accepted, despite their modest means. In the beginning, we all saw young soldiers with practically nothing except a kalash and a few magazines who decided to face death practically bare-chested. It's been done, the circumstances of the offense. The state had to equip them quickly, with all the sacrifices that this entailed. Foods. Beyond the equipment, this war situation has had incalculable social and human consequences. According to everyone, my name is AES Sorf. I am. Burkinabes have moved on, peaceful peasant citizens who live in their village, who have never asked anyone for anything, who have never done anything wrong to anyone, have found themselves one day invaded by killers without question. This has led to massive population displacement. Thousands of Boukhams, and even 1 million Burkambek, had to flee their homes, leaving everything behind. The goods, but often, very often, lives and dignity are lost for escapees. But then again, the situation. Urgency. People who have fled in these conditions have had to leave all the granaries full of people who didn't necessarily need to ask for food. They need to be given food, water, welcomed, housed, fed, and clothed. Where will we get the money? The Burkini has accomplished that. It's their war. They have to find the means to equip those who go to the front so that the soldier who goes to the front, leaving his wife and children behind, knows that behind him, there are people in town or elsewhere who are working to bring help and solidarity to these people. These people have fled, with nothing left, and it's important that we in the Ukraine, who are still lucky enough to have food, share what we have with them. It's important for the state to take care of these people. And the store in peace in Kombi, when the call went out, everyone contributed, from our big merchants to the lesser merchants. The new operator. Private sector workers. Our mothers were orange saleswomen, so the daily turnover was often less than 1,000 francs. Everyone has taken something from themselves, everyone has consented. A sacrifice for unity. Where this nation? A ministry, the Ministry of Humanitarian Action? I think, I could be wrong, that the word humanitarian didn't exist before. We're gay. And we got what little we could get. And we entrusted it to agents, including the Sheikh and the 3 others. It's all about managing and providing enough food to keep her busy. Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to be here on these issues, and it's in these circumstances that every €0 counts. It is in these circumstances that they, dear Mr. Oudradrago Salafur, Bayou Philippe and Dame Tarpara Udrago Petrini, could think of nothing better than snatching food from these poor people, who just want to eat. And you know very well, it's not for the faint-hearted that a family man does it. Lining up for food. Beyond the physical aspect, hunger or otherwise, it's a question of honor. We were able to pull the food out. Where else are you going to invest in luxury living and send people to high schools? This is not acceptable. The facts have been committed. The law speaks of the circumstances of the offense. We believe that these are the circumstances you must take into account when determining sentences. But it's not the only thing to consider. We also have to consider. Of course, I mentioned the fact that these were already Burkina of a certain category who might be sheltered from need. They didn't have to come and share a meal with those who were destitute. The other circumstance to consider. It is the fact that we're only at such a high level, over 5 billion. Who was hijacked by the catch? Maybe there are others we didn't get to know. Men's memories? I'm not aware, at least not as far as the poll is concerned, that so many billions have been taken out for public denunciation offences. So the amount involved is also a factor to be taken into account in determining the sentence. Another element, another circumstance of the offence, is the period over which the effect takes place. So, Mr. Etienne, you heard him, says he began managing the account during 2018, but he reminded you, Mr. President, honourable members of the court, that he himself participated in a fuel embezzlement operation of over 100 million in 2017. So from 2017 to today, that's about 7 years. That this practice has been lost, and we believe that the length of time over which the practices have persisted must also be taken into account in determining the seriousness, I was going to say, the extreme seriousness of the facts. Mr. Chairman, and it doesn't stop there with the circumstances of the aggravation. We said it earlier. It's the destination we've made of the money. How can you take food in these situations and distribute it to animals? How can we take away what is rightfully due to the IDP from the internally displaced people, who have been the subject of contributions from all Burkinabes, both inside and outside the country? The agency comes from the people of Burkina Faso. But there are some Burkinab from elsewhere who felt the need to contribute from outside. They sent their contribution, and of course the friends of Burkina. We can't accept that people in Burkina Faso can take so much money and put it into so many utilities. So these are extremely serious matters, but we know that when the defendants' counsel come to speak, they'll do so. Their first argument will be that of forgiveness. Mr. President, we beg your pardon. It's begun. But Mr. Chairman, let me remind you that, when you read Article 216, first paragraph, there are no savings. The law makes no provision for pardon, and even if you want to read the Penal Code, read the Code of Criminal Procedure, read the whole arsenal in Burkinab law, the word pardon appears nowhere. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's up to you to take into account something that hasn't been taken into account by the legislator. And on this precise point, at the start of the trial, you were told, Mr. President, that criminal law is to be interpreted strictly, and we were quick to say no, it's not the law. The sacrosanct principle of the unknown will be impoverished if not bequeathed. Of the question for us, Mr. Chairman, to take into account any forgiveness that may come to be professed in front of your bar, because it's not provided for by law. And even if it were, it was felt that the law could not define all circumstances. He did say to consider the circumstances of the offence. Is the professor at your bar relevant to the offence? The circumstance of inflation is that which existed either before or at the time of the commission of the offence. So if there are 6 circumstances in which forgiveness can be granted, it cannot be taken into account in sentencing, and the public museum considers that you are not going to grant this request to speak. Mr. Chairman, on the legal point of view, as I told you, forgiveness cannot prosper, but on other points, it can be said, we are Burkinab, we are also made up of our cultures and our traditions. You may need to take into account elements that are not legal, what we might call factual or even moral elements. Where I come from, forgiveness is key. But here again, I ask you a question. Is the witness ready to offer forgiveness to the one who decided to take, as I said earlier, the meal of this little boy who is crying at night in front of his mother who has nothing to give him, and knowing that her child is going to sleep starving, and that the one who takes food from this little boy, this little girl, to give to 23 wild ducks? If forgiveness is offered, should we consider it? Thinks not. The same cannot be said for the person who takes the money to go and make something of himself. It was said on the stand that I was able to do it because I wanted to make something of myself. The state's money, the money of orphans, widows and the vulnerable, and you're using it to build? This is not acceptable. The same applies, of course, to all the other Torpaga ladies who took money from these widows and orphans to go and buy themselves a restaurante arabe for. Let it keep rolling until the investigation begins. We believe that the factual sphere of the factual point of view of the moral point of view should not be accepted. And so, for us, forgiveness came later, it was never a teacher before. I could have understood that at some point, on a day like that, no one called them out on their bad consciences, their good consciences. I was going to say they said, what we're doing here is no good, we're going to denounce them and then ask for forgiveness if they'd asked for it spontaneously. At the very least, we can say they didn't do it and they made plays and music for us to be there. If they want forgiveness today? And if I were there, please, Mr. Le President, dear member of the tribunal, this request for forgiveness, because for us this request for forgiveness carries within itself all the seeds of its success. And if you don't succeed, you won't succeed. So they'll certainly come back to the point of forgiveness. I'll take the Relac Council's word for it a little bit, when they said that this is it. It could happen that we think of a discouragement in the fight against corruption and related offenses, and not to give in to discouragement. He used the image of the one who pushes the bar, who goes up the hill and comes back down and continues to do the same thing without getting discouraged. It makes me think of Greek mythology, specifically Aegeus, one of the biggest criminals. So, allow me, Mr. President, in just 2 minutes to explain what Iction did. He rushed his future father-in-law in a flame, in a burning ditch, even though it was he himself who had invited him to a wedding feast. Zeus, king. And decided to forgive him. And to show my forgiveness, just the same guest at an Olympian meal, where he ate ambrosia. He drank the nectar and listened to the lee. And yet the feast couldn't think of anything better than wooing Zeus' wife. As you know from looking at the defendants we've had all this time, for us, the possibility of repeating the inflation seems to suffer no debate. And the other three, it will preoccupy them and start again, drawing out the sound of what happened and preventing further deception. The public prosecutor's office believes that forgiveness and first-time offenders are not worth considering. Worked together and cooperated with the police, admitting the facts in front of your bar. But Michel le President, I'd like to point out that, at the end of the collaboration, there are none. You'll have noticed that all the suffering we had to go through before we could finally get to the bottom of the matter, we dragged our feet, we raised actions that didn't swallow the trouble. And even when we started the investigation, as the 7 and 1 told you, his sister and others rushed to withdraw money from his account. When you realize you've done wrong, don't pay to see marabouts to avoid getting caught. Were you told, Mr. President, that he took state money to go and eat at the WAC so that the state wouldn't find out? State money so that the state doesn't discover you, is that admissible? I don't want to pass judgment on the existence or otherwise of Walkman's powers, but I do think and I do know that money taken in such contexts is a maraboutic enterprise that is pure fantasy and could not possibly produce anything. So let's say it was a CIT, it's purely chimerical, it's imaginary. And naturally, it's congenital, right from the start, as soon as you've taken the money, the state. Now you can't go on thinking that maraboutage was going to do something for you, or that the brand was going to be able to do something for you. So on the personality of the defendants, and I'll end here, I'll be really brief on this point about the personality of the defendants. You see, Mr. Chairman, personality is deduced. There's one thing I'd like to stress, though, and that's the ambient sympathy that the defendants may have at today's date in view of the perverse effect. Unfortunately, this is the only perverse effect of the retransmission. We had the impression that the cheat has become. When you become a celebrity, it's normal sympathy. It's the human being who is like that, who sees that when his project is in difficulty to have a normal sympathy. I have no problem for those Burkina who have a sympathy today for cheating, I have no problem for that. It's only human. But I say to you, Mr. Chairman, this is a court of law, and the court assesses the facts and applies the law. We mustn't get sentimental, we mustn't get into that kind of understanding. Okay, shall we? Coldly assess the effect and strictly apply the law. We're not asking you to be excessive, that's not our aim, we're asking you to be fair. And unfortunately for the facts of this case, the right facts are extremely serious. That's why we're going to collect extremely serious sentences.
Thank you, families, for listening up to this stage. I'm so proud of Captain Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso. If every government, if every leader, every president in Africa would do what he's doing, corruption will stop. They are not doing it only in the court, they are doing it in the police stations, in the schools, in the hospital, everywhere. They want to publicly humiliate them so others will know and follow. And it is good because this money is not for the government, it's for children, it's for widowers, it's for widows. You heard it all. We all know what humanitarian money is for. So I'll leave you here. Thank you, family. Thank you so much for listening. I think the judgment time is even over. There was one video I watched, they gave them 30 years in prison. But I will look for the video and then I'll be back to share it with you, like I always do it here. Thank you. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day. See you soon, families. Credit to Faso 7 RTB News. Thank you, families. Bye-bye.